Chapter 647, Sea of Ruins. Although Jayaman's sparrow didn't show it on his face, Katlia seemed to notice the surprise in him. She simply explained, "It's a kind of flight that makes it impossible for the death announcer to continue its pursuit." Just as she said that, she discovered that Jayaman's sparrow had completely changed his attire. He wore a round neck shirt, a brown jacket, pantaloons with a dark-colored cap. He didn't look like an adventurer and instead resembled a native of the city of generosity, Bayam. According to Nina, his clothes were drenched by a huge wave last night. Does he only have one set of decent clothes? Katlia recalled and found the reason. She wasn't surprised by this. She even felt that it matched Jayaman Sparrow's insanity. He only had one set of decent clothes, spending the rest of his money on mystical items, beyonder weapons, spirituality charms, with the sole goal of raising his strength. It's no wonder the King of Immortality gave up. All he did was attack passing ships. There wasn't enough hatred to drive him to pursue us the entire way. Yes, in front of the four kings, senior pirate admirals still have a chance to escape to a certain degree. Almost arriving. Man, I haven't completed my digestion. However, acting as the crazy adventurer yesterday seemed rather effective. The crew of the future gave a very spontaneous and warm response towards it. I should completely digest it in 2 to 3 days. And even if we entered the dangerous waters, finding mermaids wouldn't be that simple. I should have enough time. Klein nodded and suppressed his urge to ask. He planned on passing by Admiral of Stars and head to his usual spot to have breakfast. At this moment, he saw a pirate who was carrying a blue fish which was alive and kicking rush in. He went straight for a corner. Seated there was the second mate of the future, Heath Doyle. His face was nearly transparent from the paleness, and his nose bridge was rather unharmonious. Puh! The fish, which was nearly a meter long, was placed in front of Bloodless. Heath Doyle extended his hands and pressed down on the fish. He bent his body bit by bit as he inched his head downwards, plastering his face to the scales as though he was kissing it. Suddenly, the fish stiffened, and like wax meeting fire, melted rapidly and turned into a disgusting pool of flesh and blood. The flesh and blood surged into Heath Doyle's mouth like liquid as they covered his skin. Amidst the horrendous sight of the squirming, the fish and all the bones, flesh, and blood vanished. Nothing was left behind as Heath Doyle's face appeared very clean. All that was left was the bright red color on his lips like a blooming rose. Rose Bishop. The name of the sequence surfaced in Klein's mind. Katlia, who was beside him, also saw the scene as she nudged her glasses. Every Rose Bishop needs to replenish themselves with enough blood and flesh. That way, they can fully showcase their beyonder powers and not lose control after being injured as a result of an intense battle. Her lips curled slightly as she added, "However, the lunatics from the Aurora Order have an inclination towards human flesh and blood. Actually, substitutes would work fine." From the looks of it, this Bloodless with a bounty of 7,600 pounds is really lucky. On the one hand, he's lucky to achieve Sequence 6 at once without any abnormalities or losing control. On the other hand, joining Admiral of Stars' pirate crew is another. Without the secret knowledge that this lady who is being pursued by knowledge possesses, he might have turned into a monster that desires human flesh and blood sooner or later, even if he didn't listen to the true creator's voice. Klein sighed silently. He was increasingly convinced that the secret suppliant pathway, which was also the shepherd pathway, was the beyonder pathway, which was the easiest to lose control and turn mad. Nothing came close. Even the abyss pathway, which represented evil, was slightly lacking. Klein retracted his gaze, and just as he was about to take a step forward, the entire ship jolted. In an instant, the scene ahead of the future naturally surfaced in Klein's mind. The blue sea was being separated by a gigantic crack as infinite amounts of seawater plummeted down into bottomless darkness like a waterfall. This scene was magnificent and mystical. It made one suspect if they weren't on Earth. Whoosh! The future wasn't able to stop in time as it rushed to the edge and quickly plummeted. Bangs, bangs, bang. All the pirates in the dining hall flew up and slammed into the ceiling. Toast, white bread, butter, margarine, beer, and roasted fish flew around at random without settling down. Klein also lost his balance as he couldn't help but be thrown towards the ceiling. He extended his palm in time and pressed upwards, quickly adjusting his posture like an acrobatic act, allowing him to look less pathetic. Not far away, Nina showcased her stunning balance. With the help of the ceiling, she maintained her posture. Perhaps intentionally or unintentionally, she extended her feet and kicked Frank to send the poison expert flying diagonally to a beer barrel, drenching him with pale yellow liquid. At this moment, the most casual and unfazed person was Katlia. Stars swirled around her as the resplendence beneath her feet coagulated, causing her to float in midair. She wasn't affected by the sudden dip. Apart from her, Bloodless was the least pathetic. At some point in time, this rose bishop had blended into the shadows and disappeared. With the future about to plummet into the bottomless crevice, a plume of water surged up suddenly. It held up the ship and threw it high into the air and towards the other edge. After momentarily floating in the air, Klein believed that the future had landed stably on the surface of the sea. Once again, the charm from the sea god domain, which he held tightly in his right hand, wasn't used. At that moment, the sunlight outside the window shone inside, illuminating the mess inside the dining hall. Klein, who had long regained his balance, briskly walked to the window and saw that the endless sea seemed to be burning with golden flames. It appeared to have been noon the entire time. It was only morning moments ago. Klein looked up and narrowed his eyes to see that the sky was filled with sunlight. There were no clouds nor the sun, just a swath of golden rays. It's no wonder Arodes' description of this place is that it's no longer a real ocean, but a relic of a war between the gods. As he swept his gaze, he discovered nearby ruins which were diagonally ahead. The ruins were mostly covered by seawater. Protruding out from the surface was gray stones and stone columns that formed a peak. At the top was a dome-like object. From its angle, it was able to hold up quite a large area of space. The ruins were definitely massive in the first place. Through the transparent waters, Klein saw that its base extended to the seabed without end. These are extremely dangerous waters. At some point in time, Katlia came beside him. Klein turned his head over and waited for her to continue. Katlia's gaze was cast forward as she said somewhat wistfully, "I haven't been here many times. Furthermore, all my visits happened a long time ago." My and not our. That means that it wasn't with the crew of the future. Or was it back when she was a subordinate of Queen Mystic? Klein acutely noticed the terms which Admiral of Stars had used as he made a guess. Katlia didn't turn her head as she looked at the sky and see which were covered in golden flames. No one knows where the ends of these waters are, nor does anyone know how wide it is. Do you know what's most dangerous about this place? I should have gotten Arodes to give me a more detailed explanation. Klein honestly shook his head. Previously, he had nearly been caught by a demigod of the true creator. He had only survived thanks to the die of probability. Therefore, in the past 2 months, he didn't dare bring the radio transceiver back to the real world. He was afraid that the true creator, who was closely watching the region, would sense it. Hence, he didn't have an opportunity to contact Arodes. His original plan was to seek out Will Ossipton's help through the paper crane once he approached the dangerous waters, and understand the corresponding dangers of the environment. To his surprise, they had encountered King of Immortality Agalito, and the future didn't give him any time before they arrived at their destination. Behind the thick glasses, Katlia's black eyes with a purple hue glazed over for a moment. There are many ruins floating here. There are all kinds of mutated monsters. Among them include many demigods who have lost control or ancient evil creatures. This isn't the most dangerous part. If it's only because of this, these waters would have become a hunting ground for the 7 churches, a treasure trove for them to obtain high-sequence ingredients or items. Of course, there are many monsters and evil creatures who have lost control here, but they might not be real. They can kill us, but they might not leave anything behind after they are killed. Upon hearing this, Klein made the connection to the dragon of imagination, Ankwelt. This dragon king could conjure anything through his imagination. Could it be that these waters were where the ancient gods of the Second Epoch fought? Klein nearly frowned. Catlia said with an ethereal voice as she continued. Here, you will never guess what dangers you will encounter next. Perhaps you will just melt while approaching a ruin, turning into a wax-like monster. Perhaps you might turn into a rock amidst the storms from slightly deviating from the explored sea routes and end up shattering to pieces. To beyonders at our level, that is the greatest danger. Klein turned his head slightly as he sharply asked, "What about beyonders that surpass our levels?" Catlia sighed and smiled. "The waters here are filled with a voice that shouldn't be heard. The higher the sequence, the easier it is to hear it. Therefore, most demigods who dare explore these waters have ended up with problems. They either went mad or lost control, ending up lost here forever. It's no wonder the 7 churches don't send their experts here to reap the harvest. Most of them ended up with problems, which means that there are a small number of demigods that can survive here." Enlightened, Klein looked out the window again. At this moment, the future had closed in on the ruins. Suddenly, a loud and clear panting was heard by everyone.